Hi there, Joe here. So today I'm at my niece's house with her Mad and her husband Tim, and we want to show Tim's garden today and talk about a couple interesting things that he worked on to make his garden successful. He had to landscape the terrace because it's uneven, and also he used a program called SketchUp to dictate where the garden is so that he got the maximum sun for the plants.
Hello, I'm Tim, and I'm here with Joe T talking about my terraced garden today. Now, I have hilly land on my property, while Joe has very flat land. I also have very sandy soil, so I couldn't plant directly into the hillside. What I did is I bought raised garden beds, and I dug them into the ground, so that way I could level out the ground. And then I bought soil and brought that in and filled all my beds with good high quality raised bed soil. That allowed me to utilize some of the land more evenly and plant plants more evenly across my entire property.
This is a neat tool that I found called Google SketchUp. I was introduced to this in high school. So I modeled my house. You can see here that on the left, and I made sure it was facing in the correct direction. And then I was able to use this sun shadows feature in order to simulate the shadow.
This is my lower level garden. This is the main spot of my garden. This is my bell pepper bed. I call it my Debbie bed because my neighbor Debbie wanted bell peppers, so I planted all my bell peppers together. Here I have one planter of early jalapenos. My wife loves summer quesadillas. Tomatoes and jalapenos together make a good summer quesadilla. And then behind me here, you see one of my large raised beds. This is 12 by 4. So I used a square foot gardening method. So I've got 12 plants this way by 4 this way. I have a giant tomato trellis in the back. I use the net technique. So I have got electric conduit frame with a net that I lace the tomatoes through so that way they are supported their whole growth structure. And then in the front, I've got peppers. And then all the way in the front, I use this area for zucchini and pumpkin so I can drape them over and outside of the bed. Here is a cheap Aldi raised garden bed that I just got that I call this as my experimentation bed. You can tell Joe T is going to be mad at me for not weeding, but I don't like to weed, so I just threw some of my plants that I didn't think were going to make it into this bed and let them do whatever they're going to do. And then I use some pots here for some of my volunteer peppers. Let us know if you want a video on volunteer plants, on how I plant my starters. So I've got some of my volunteer plants just in the pots just to let them go because I don't like to kill plants. So here you can see my cucumber tunnel. I just got these big garden posts, and my idea with this is I was on a hill, but I have a 12 by 2 garden bed on each side. And that allows me to put up this trellis on either side, and I grow all of my climbing plants on them. So I grow my cucumbers. You can see some of my sugar pie pumpkins here. I've got cantaloupes growing on this fence, and it allows them to go up and over and really utilize the space vertically in order to maximize the space that I have. So this is my upper level, and you can see I have a retaining wall down here because I'm built on such a hill that I needed a retaining wall around my yard. But what I did is I planted plants low and high and kept the tomatoes, because I know they're going to grow high, coming up the hill. And you can see I have another tomato net back here to hold up all the tomatoes back there. And then I planted them on the way down so that way we could utilize the sun, which comes from this direction, as much as possible. This whole hillside gets sun all morning and most of the afternoon. So it was a good spot for plants. You just have to think strategically about how you want to use the space. I have my pool over here and my pool fence here. The deer stay out of it over here. But what I needed to do was cap my garden. So I took one of the raised beds that I had before and extended it all on my garden to the point where this fence matched this garden bed and the retaining wall. And I grew a plant that the deer don't like called a Jerusalem artichoke. The leaves are very rough and coarse, and they're a perennial, so they'll come back every year. But they grow tubers underground, so if I wanted to, I could dig it up and I could eat the tubers. But once you plant them in a bed, you've got to be careful because they'll keep spreading. So you need to keep them contained, and you need to keep them in one area, and the deer don't like them, so they provide a natural fence barricade.